and welcome back to Grounded, a podcast by Inspiring Time. I'm Amber Card, the founder of Inspiring Time, and joining me today is seriously a dear friend. I was trying to remember before we jumped on how long Beth and I have been friends, and years just kind of flow together. So I think it was around 14 is when we met, and our
Probably
girls
so.
were in the most fun 4-year-old class at one of the most fabulous mommy day outs ever. It's one of our favorite schools of all times. So before we get started, let me just give a few housekeeping tips here. If you've not subscribed to the channel, please do. Leave me a review. Let me know what sparks your interest so we can continue serving you that content and making this a fun and interesting place. Don't forget to visit our conversations and who is speaking. Go to check out their business, support them. That is truly why we're here, is just to share and spread our talents and our purpose in life. So Beth, oh my goodness, you live on the coast. It is beautiful down there. I bet it is warm, or it's getting warm.
Well, I hate to say it's about 60 degrees here today. So not quite warm for the coast of Mississippi.
Well, that's true, I guess.
Tomorrow it will be 70.
When it hit 85 in Montgomery a few days ago, I thought, I'm not ready for this just yet.
Right.
Because we went from really cool to really warm. So guys, She lives in a beautiful town on the coast. And she is also a physical therapist, which I'm going to let her explain to you. But her business is all around helping people regain the confidence in their body and knowing what their body can do. And her wonderful business is called A Core Solution. And Beth, I'm going to let you share about your family, your training, and all those good things. So welcome to the show, and thank you for jumping on.
Well, thank you for having me. My name is Beth Edmiston, and I am not a military person, but I was born in North Carolina, grew up in St. Louis, Missouri, finished high school in Savannah, Georgia, went to college in Gainesville, Florida, where I did a bachelor's in physical therapy. My husband and I moved to Maine for 4 years, then to New Hampshire for a year, and now we've landed back towards the south in Ocean Springs, Mississippi. I went to physical therapy school and graduated in 1999. So I've been practicing physical therapy full-time, part-time, kind of PRN ever since my children were born. So I have a 16-year-old son, a 14-year-old son, and an 11-year-old daughter, who all are very active and keep me very busy, of course. And my husband has been a physician here on the coast since we moved here in 2008, and is an entrepreneur at heart as well. And so we're just keeping on and staying busy. I have always wanted to have my own little practice. I started my business when we lived in Maine, starting with my version of a podcast before podcasts were coming out. I've recorded an audio CD of the foundation principles of Pilates, in which I was able to provide for my patients at the time. I knew I always loved orthopedics, so I practiced mostly in orthopedics and outpatient therapy, and I got my certification in Pilates rehab in the year 2000. So it wasn't as popular as it has become in the last decade, but I have learned how to use all the Pilates apparatuses in a physical therapy realm to help patients improve whatever it is. If they have an injury, if they have something that is degenerative, but something to help them learn how to take control of their own body. So I started A Core Solution about 1.5 years ago. I was working part-time and started doing some private physical therapy on the side, and have been given the opportunity to collaborate with a local Pilates studio, in which I am now able to use some of their equipment in conjunction with my physical therapy. So that's where I am today.
So I have to say, even when the girls were in the same class, the minute you met Beth, you knew that she was meant for, not that she wasn't living up to her full potential, but when mommyhood takes over, that tends to be where we gravitate. raise the kids, get them to
Yeah.
the place where they can be a little bit self-sufficient, and then we get to work on ourselves again. And that's what I love about this podcast, is sharing stories of other women who have raised the kids or worked, part-time throughout, and now they're really diving into what they feel like their purpose is in life. And Beth has always been an entrepreneur. She's always talked about, doing this and doing that. She's a huge volunteer in the community, and she really brightens up any room when she walks into it. She has so much to offer. Now, this month is all about children.
Oh, thank you.
And oh my goodness, you're so welcome. It's the truth. But
Yes.
this month is all about children. And I knew when I set up the schedule for this month that I needed Beth to be on here, because something has really stuck with me all these years and through all the moves. She said to me, when children have so much screen time, their posture becomes so poor because they are, however they're sitting, you just kind of roll into it. You're tired. And so
Right.
that really stuck with me. So I knew when we set this up that every parent out there needed to hear this, because 2020 happened and we have screen time all over the place. You're doing Zoom calls, you're on the computer. So let's start there, Beth. Let's talk about these kiddos and how we can help them maintain a nice posture and what goes with that. And I would love to hear any funny stories about that your kids love to yell at you because, their mom is a physical therapist.
Oh, yes. Okay. So I remember something that I told Amber long ago, that whenever I saw my kids playing on their iPads, I would tell them to get on their tummies. Just as babies need tummy time, kids needed more tummy time, because we are forward looking at our phones, but the kids themselves would, sit in school or preschool, they would get playtime, but then they would come home and rest in front of the TV or an iPad before they would go play again. So it was something that I always encouraged my kids, was for them to lay on their tummies propped up on their elbows. Because when we do that, I don't know if you can see me from the side, but if you're on your stomach and you lift up, your head is not down. So it brings you into a better cervical position. Currently, all of my children have their own phones, and we have conversations every day, because as soon as they get in the car, they want to look at their phone and their head is down. And I always will say, bring your head up. And so they look back at me. And once I knew that I was doing this podcast, I started doing a little bit of research about screen time and how it affects all of us. Besides the fact of it, affecting our posture, which does have long-term effects, which I will talk about. The screen time itself can do so much damage to our brain. Of course, it decreases children's creativity, their ability to adapt and to react to situations in which they would do if they were playing, especially with other kids or just independently. But what I battle now as a mom is allowing enough screen time on either TV or their phone or an Xbox. And I learned last night that greater than 7 hours, which seems like no way would any mom let their child have 7 hours of screen time, but it adds up for sure. And the days where they weren't as busy with school or activities, they had a lot more time to sit in front of their screen. But 7 hours or longer actually thins our brain cortex. I was shocked when I read that last night. So that has everlasting effect. It's not just a short-term effect. So they, of course, recommend no more than 2 hours a day for children 8 and under. Adults, of course, and teens are on the computer more, and our phones are our mini laptops. So it is ideal for us to limit it as much as possible. If we can use a computer instead of a smaller screen, it just sets us up for better positioning than looking downward.
Okay, and what about, so that's perfect. On your forearms and then kind of arch back for tummy time. Now,
Yes.
what about, so the 7 hours, was that a week or a day?
That was per day.
I couldn't, golly. But I mean, if you think about it, if the kids, I know both kids actually do most of their homework because we are public schools here and they are going full time. So the teachers were trying to diminish germs. I can appreciate that, and not
Sure.
passing germs around. So we're submitting a lot of things by Google Classroom. Our daughter can tell us more about Google Classroom and how
Oh,
Google
yeah.
works than what I even care to know. So,
Right.
but that, they're on there every class submitting papers. Okay, so that's probably at least 2 hours, I would think, on their
Y-
computer there.
Sure. My son is on virtual schooling and he's been in class since 9, 10, 11, 12, 1. So this is about 4 hours. And then he'll leave and go to his football class, which is an activity. So that's a good break from the computer. But there are children, students that don't leave their home to go to an activity like football or basketball or baseball. And so they're still at their computer. And then they rest for a little bit, they take a break, and then they join their friends on some sort of video game later. So it can easily add up. What I recommend is if you're going to be in front of a computer or your phone or a TV, at least every 30 minutes, stand up, walk around, do some sort of stretch. You can challenge yourself that if there's a commercial, if you're watching TV, you can do a push up or, lay on your stomach and prop up on your elbows just to stretch your body in a different way than you are when you're sitting.
Something as simple as that you don't necessarily think about. It's such a good reminder, because tonight now probably, let's see, commercial breaks are usually 2 minutes. So that is
Right?
2 minutes. You can get up. We have a dog who loves to chase us around the house. Maybe you make it a fun game where you just run around.
Sure. Yep. Challenge yourself and see if you can hold a plank. When you're in a plank, you're working the back of your neck, building up the strength there. That's something very simple that people can do, either, propped up on their elbows doing a plank, or even, having your knees down so that you don't feel challenged so much to a full plank. But you will build up strength over time. So there are very uh, easy things that you can incorporate into your daily life. Someone who's at a desk, computer, I would have you stand up. You can have a stand up desk. There are classrooms that are allowing kids to use a stand up desk if they have that available. There are some classrooms that have those big theraballs that kids can sit on that keeps their spine moving. You can move your hips, you can do some gentle bouncing. All of that will help to sort of give some mobility to the joints instead of them sitting for a prolonged time. I give my patients the example, if you sit in a bad position, a bad posture, slumped and head forward, it's like if I held my thumb down to my arm for 20 seconds, which is a long time when you count to 20. When I get up, gosh, my joint hurts. Well, that is the same thing that we are doing to our spine when we sit slumped. You are taking a position of your joint to an end range and holding it there for a sustained time, which then stretches out the muscle and then the tendons and the ligaments of all the joints. And so over time, that can build up inflammation, degeneration, all sorts of harmful things for our bodies.
Well, and it's interesting just looking at Emma Catherine. So Emma Catherine is more like myself. She loves creativity, drawing, cooking in the kitchen. So very arts and crafts things, creating. And our son is all sports. He loves all things moving and balls and all the things. But it's very interesting, their posture.
Mm-hmm.
Junior, I always find him, because I think a long time ago he took to heart on the forearms and pressing back. So even if he does have his Kindle in front of him, he is far enough back and pushing back, and he'll get up and take a break because he doesn't want to sit still long. Now,
Sure.
Emma Catherine, she has an egg chair in her room, which forces you to kind of do this whole hunker down thing. So just
Right.
posture in general, and I hadn't correlated those two things, but when you see them standing side by side, one is more prone to be very confident, shoulders
Right. Broad
dropped,
shoulders, head
and
tall.
Emma Catherine seems to be more rounded and just carrying herself a little bit different. Some small reminders, what might those be to tell parents? What could you say to them to help with posture, about to get back in line?
So oftentimes when we were growing up, our parents would say, stand up, sit up tall. And most people will then sit up tall, but they overextend. Okay, so that's the same thing as going too far slumped. You are going too far in extension. So I always give the good imagery. So think of your shirt being broad like it's on a hanger, your shoulders are broad. And then I always think, okay, be like a puppet string. Our kids may not know what puppets are, but we all do as adults. You know, if you were being pulled from the back of your head, that creates length or elongation through our spine, and that automatically will pull us into a better alignment. The other thing is your pelvis is your base. So if you can get your pelvis, you can do pelvic tilts. And if you get your pelvis sitting up tall on your sit bone, that will then align the rest of your spine better. So a few little tips, but imagery works really good, especially for kids.
I love, because I tell Emma Catherine to roll and drop her shoulders, so away from her ears, and make sure, like you said,
Yep.
I hadn't thought about the hanger. That's fantastic. And then I think as women, and maybe it's just bad posture in general, but you seem to see women with their tail untucked, it slightly curves out just a little bit. So that's something I'm constantly reminding myself, even when I walk, is to tilt my hips under, tuck my tail, and then think about my core strength. So most of us walk. Could you use imagery to explain how you're supposed to walk? Because if you think about it, it actually takes some focus to walk with good posture.
Yes. Okay, well, first of all, I need to correct you. Tucking
Okay.
your bottom under is not ideal.
Okay.
Only if you have an excessive arch. We have a normal arch to our back. What I tell people to do is zip up your abdominals. So as if you were zipping up your pants in the front, pubic bone to belly button, and that will get you in a good, proper pelvic positioning. If you tuck your bottom under, we're flattening that curve, that normal curvature, which then can stretch out those posterior ligaments and bulge your disc towards the back. So you need to maintain a normal curvature of the back, which is that arch, which maybe you'll have on a link of the picture that I had sent.
Yes.
So real careful that you don't undertuck. Zipping up is what I tell a lot of my patients, and that helps to activate your deep abdominal muscle, the transversus. So pulling your navel to the spine, or think of zipping your pubic bone to belly button, and as if you were putting on a tight pair of pants. So that helps to get your base strong and in the right position. And that's what I tell you. When you walk, you need to walk like you're trying to hold in your belly a little bit, not a full contraction, but just a little bit of a tone to the belly. And again, that long, tall posture. And then the joints will move, because you have to rotate, you have to get the swing, you have to work in all three planes of motion when we walk. But walking tall and keeping the abdominals braced is a good way to start.
I love that, because why do I say tuck your tail? Because when most females did something on stage, I can hear very clearly all my Southern older women who were helping run these pageants, or being on stage, always said, drop your shoulders and tuck your tail.
Yeah.
I remember, and I don't know if that was just a regional thing. So that is very interesting to know. I love the imagery, and that's why I love these podcasts, because you learn so many new, better techniques than what you were potentially using. So this is fantastic. I'm so glad you actually corrected me, because a lot of people probably have heard that same thing.
Sure. And look, I went to physical therapy 20 years ago. We were taught in every exercise to tuck the bottom under. It wasn't until I did my Pilates rehab, which I learned that your spine has to be in proper alignment to strengthen. And then you work in ranges that you can stabilize the right position of the spine. So you have to adapt. Things change.
You have to adapt. And that's why it's so, like I said, I love doing these podcasts. I learn something new all the time.
Yes.
Okay. So I feel like now this is probably a good question for any human that's listening.
Okay.
But what is is there a correlation between having stronger abs and then a stronger back? Like I always hear, if you do something to the front, you need to counterbalance to the back. So is that an actual thing or not a thing?
So your abdominal muscles, if we start there, you've got 4 different groups. You've got your rectus abdominis, which is your six pack. There's no need for a six pack. It does not help to strengthen your spine in any way.
Junior's going to be
It
very
looks
upset.
good. Yes. Then you have your obliques, which connect ribs to pelvis in different diagonal patterns. And then you have the deep abdominal muscle, which is your transversus abdominis. That's what activates when I tell you to pull your navel towards your spine or zip up the belly button muscle. That muscle is the only abdominal muscle that connects to the spine. It goes, wraps around your body like an internal brace, connects posteriorly into the thoracolumbar fascia of the latissimus muscle. So I always think the lats are your abs for your upper body, and your transversus is the abdominal muscle for your lower trunk. So it sort of does seem to appear that something in the front, something in the back, because the transversus is definitely more anterior in our body, and the lats are the shoulder and the neck stabilizer for your upper trunk. And so that's a posterior and an anterior muscle for sure. So when you're working out, when you say to do something for the front to the back, anytime you exercise, you do want to consider both directions. You don't want to be over balanced in one side of the body versus the other, for sure.
Which is why I think Pilates, my husband loves to do heavy weightlifting. That seems to fuel the male body a little bit different than it does the female body. But I have found as I've gotten more mature that yoga and Pilates really speak to what I feel like my body is craving. So a lot of good stretching and then actual controlled muscle work seems to be a good place for me to start, instead of like, a lot of times you'll hear go lift weights or go run, or if somebody were just starting into this world of exercising, would there be some exercises you might say this is a good place to start?
Yes, of course. So just a little brief history. Pilates has been around for a long time. Joseph Pilates actually rehabbed himself in his hospital bed by attaching springs to the frame of the bed. And the springs were used for assistance. So as he couldn't, because he was weak, he couldn't actually get up out of bed like we do if we were sitting up from our bed. So the springs allowed his body to learn that movement. He attached them from above. That spring brought him back up to sitting. The springs in the exercise equipment of the Pilates repertoire is a reformer and on the Cadillac table, and they can act as resistance as well. So they are a resistance weight to help tone and build muscle strength for sure. Pilates in general is a more neuromuscular re-education type of exercise or movement program to help people learn proper movement. And then in a Pilates realm, or in a rehab realm, it builds up to long, lean muscle tone. Most every exercise works on stretching as well as control of movement through an in range, because a lot of it gives you other challenges. So your core is actually engaged in every exercise on the Pilates equipment. For home exercises, pulling just an isometric contraction of learning how to pull that navel to spine. I always teach people to do it on their exhale. So exhale with effort. So when you prep by breathing in, and as you exhale, you breathe out through your lips and you pull that belly button to the spine. I like the imagery that when we engage our abdominals, we're kind of squeezing the center of a water balloon and the water disperses on either end. Our center of gravity is right at the position of where our transversus muscle is. So when you engage that, it's like it elongates and disperses the space between each of the vertebrae in the spine. So it creates length and a little decompression. Oh. Pelvic tilts, which is just kind of rocking that spine into an arch position and a flat position, backwards and forwards. You can see that it moves my neck as well, because our spine is, of course, connected from the crown of your base of your skull to your tailbone. So if you move this end, this end is going to get movement too. So getting movement in the spine helps to relax a lot of the spinal muscles that get tense. When people are in chronic pain, the deeper muscles actually turn off. There's no muscle activity, and the larger muscles take over and create a lot of extra tension. So doing pelvic tilts helps to decrease tension in those spine muscles and get the stabilizers deep within to start movement and activity again.
So this sounds like it could be a little complicated, right? Like if you don't know
Yes,
all the different muscles and all the different things. And that is why we have physical therapists, people who know what muscles do what and how to engage those in a very scientific and plotted way to help with
sure.
your pain. So how do you know when it's time to find a physical therapist?
Sooner than you think. Most people want to work it out and they want to try a home remedy or do their own exercises, which is great. It's always good. But you can go to physical therapy long before you have kind of devastating effect of your injury. I always say the sooner the better. Physical therapists are trained in your body and movement. We are movement specialists. So we are able to evaluate maybe what's causing the problem. So if it's a shoulder injury or a neck or even a knee or foot, like plantar fasciitis, a lot of times because our body moves in conjunction, all of our joints have to either produce movement or reactive movement. It's good to have your movement analyzed. So I would say to reach out to physical therapy, as soon as you have something that doesn't go away on its own within a week. So you can learn a lot if you go earlier than later and potentially not have as devastating effects of a long-term injury. Most states are a direct access state. There are a few states in the United States that still you need a physician's referral to go to physical therapy, but most doctors are very willing to refer you to a physical therapist for sure. It's a lot of great education, and you can feel better too sooner, so you're not having to persist in discomfort.
I know Christopher and I have both gone to a physical therapist, and mine was for a ridiculous reason. I tripped and dumped 300 pounds of weight on top of my stomach and caught a bar in the lower part of my back. So I
Oh my
had
gosh.
major bruising. The kids you should have seen them. Their little like endorphins kicked in immediately and they started pulling weights off of me. It
Oh
was,
gosh.
I mean, looking back, I can laugh, but it was kind of traumatic, I'm sure. But that's something that did not go away. I did go and have an x-ray done. It wasn't that day because I couldn't get in, but it was the next day. And, after icing and all that stuff, they just wanted to make sure that there was nothing internal
Internal,
and
sure.
pinching and impeding anything else. And I was so very glad to go. I went for several weeks. And he did, just like you said. Okay, let you explain this part. So if somebody were coming in to be evaluated, what might that look like if they had a back injury? What are you looking for? Or
Okay.
your exam?
So in physical therapy, when you come in for an evaluation, you're most likely given a diagnosis. So low back pain is probably what you had. It could be very specific, like disc degeneration or spinal stenosis or patellofemoral pain syndrome, just depending on what it is. A physical therapist is going to sit down with you, get the history of maybe the mechanism of which you were injured, how long it's lasted, what makes it worse, what makes it better. And then they're going to take you through some movement. So we're going to check your range of motion. We're going to check your strength. We're going to test, neurological deficits, if there's any. Physical therapists are able to help differentially diagnose. So if you came in with shoulder pain, the doctor just said shoulder pain. We're going to be a little bit more specific in finding exactly what's going on in the shoulder. Is it a bicep tendon? Is it a rotator cuff? Is it an impingement? Is it a joint? Is it actually your shoulder pain? Is it something referred from the neck? A lot of times, pain in an extremity may not be the cause or the source. It could be coming from the spine itself. So a physical therapy should be very comprehensive in that they look at least the joint above and below the site that's injured. I like to look at the whole body. I like to see, I like to watch how people walk to see sort of how their movement starting at their ankle goes all the way up into the spine. I look at if there's any asymmetries between right and left side, and then go from there. And from there, you would develop a plan, a treatment plan. One of the key things about physical therapy, and one of the best things that I like about it, is education. I like for my patients to know exactly what's going on, what the muscles are we're talking about, what they can do at home, because oftentimes people will come to physical therapy and do their exercises, but they don't do them at home. And it's really important for anything to have continuation of care outside of the session in physical therapy. Most of the time, it's just an hour, and maybe 2 hours, 2 times a week or something, and sometimes even less. And so we have to take ownership of our body. And so prevention, and then self-care, and then listening to, someone like a physical therapist who gives you good guidance.
So, do you see a lot of kiddos in physical therapy for something other than a sports related injury? Like, is that something that you wished you saw more of, maybe?
My practice is mostly adults. I don't see pediatrics in my clinic. I did not do any special training in that arena. But young adolescents, a lot of times when they were growing, just simple growing, they get joint pain or knee pain. Occasionally there's scoliosis that develops. And so teaching them how to counterbalance the effect that the spine is going in the terms of a different curvature than a normal spine should be in. Occasionally there are kids that have headaches or dizziness, and physical therapy can treat those diagnoses as well. Other than that, it's a lot of sports injuries for sure. Kids lifting way too much weight than they should prior to their body's ready to. My standard goal is that kids should lift their own body weight. So using their own body weight as resistance is much better than adding a resistance like a heavy weight, in my opinion.
Oh my goodness, that's very good to know. I know that when the kiddos decide to come out and work out with us, they're very intrigued by the bands that we have up, and Emma Catherine will pick up the little 10-pound dumbbells, and we're very careful to make sure that the form that she's using is not something that would be detrimental, even with
Yeah,
shoulder shrugs or just building some very lightweight. But of course, she weighs less than me. So
sure.
that's a different percentage than of weight, even for her. So it's
Right.
very, just from my mom's standpoint, no, no background whatsoever. When we do work out together, I am very conscientious of making sure I'm watching to make sure they're not going to
Yes.
hurt themselves.
Form is key for sure, and control. So if they're going to do a resistive bands, which I have some, hold on, let me move my chair back. You asked about an exercise you can do.
Yes.
So you can buy resistive bands anywhere. This is a loop, so you can use it around your legs. You can use it with your arms, but even with your arms out in front of you and squeezing back to squeeze your shoulder blades, this is a great postural exercise, but slow return. So a lot of times kids will just kind of come back fast, okay? And that is not the way to do it. You want to make sure that you have good control and good movement in both directions. And of course, I always want to engage that abdominal muscle.
Okay.
So when it requires effort, that's when you exhale. So when I resist the band, I should exhale. I can inhale on the return. So you could do one arm, you could do rows, you could do rotation, you can stand on it and do upright, oops, whoops. You can do upright rows, all sorts of stuff you can do with bands. You can put them around your ankles and do side walking to create better hip strength. Put them around your thighs and do bridging. So
And
much you can do with the resistive bands. You just want to make sure that you get the right resistance. It should not be too heavy to where you can't complete the movement through the full range, and where you don't have the ability to control it from the start to the finish of the movement.
so, okay, perfect thing to go in a basket beside the couch during your commercial break.
Yes.
What would be, if you were doing the control all the way out and then control in, how many do you go until you're tired, or do you do reps, or what would be your thought on that?
So I would start with 2 sets of 10. If it's super easy to complete both sets of 10, then you can move up to resistance. And when you move up resistance, um, you can go down in reps. So if you move up into resistance, you can take it to 8 reps. Or if you move up in you can then build up the reps before you move to a new resistive band. So you could do, um, let's see here, my blue is lighter than my yellow. So I could do, and my coloring is not the same as other coloring. So, blue doesn't necessarily mean light, and it's just these bands are. But I could do 2 sets of 10, and then I could build up to 2 sets of 15, and then 2 sets of resistance, and start with a set of 8 or 2 sets of 8, and then 2 sets of 10, 2 sets of 15, 2 sets of 20. And then you can change resistance again. A lot of these are great because it's working the upper back and the postural muscles. If you're going rotation with the elbows bent, out with the elbows straight, you can do diagonal patterns, working the kind of opposing muscles in the spine. Then, just a push-up or a wall push-up or a plank helps to work the front of the chest. Oftentimes you can, the resistance bands are harder to come towards the front. So I think a good old push-up is a great way, as long as you keep in mind the neck position. A lot of times people do a push-up and their head drops. You want to make sure that head, again, is back in line with your trunk. So ears over shoulders, shoulders over ribs, ribs over pelvis.
Oh,
I kind of sing that children's song in my head: head, shoulder, knees, and toes. Okay, so just head, shoulders, ribs, pelvis. It's kind of like stacking blocks. And you want to make sure that if those 4 components are stacked on each other, the spine will normally align in its right alignment.
I mean, that is a fantastic tip. If you take nothing else away today, just remembering to keep everything stacked on top of each other, like building blocks. That's
Right.
key.
And that doesn't create a flat spine. Some people think you want your spine flat. You want that normal curvature, the little arch in the neck. It's a little rounded in the mid thoracic area, and then a little arch in the low back area. And so keeping the ears over the shoulders creates that cervical lordosis, is what we call it in physical therapy.
Wonderful. Okay, now there are a few other things that I wanted to put in here, because I think, if people have never been to a physical therapist, that can be a little intimidating, which is why I kind of wanted to get what you did, or what the exam kind of looks like, because it's not intimidating. This is
no, not at all.
Helping you feel your very best. Confidence is back, agility, ability, all the things that,
Decreasing your pain. Most people come to physical therapy because they're in pain. Pain is what normally brings people into therapy. And so helping to learn breathing alone is one of the best things I teach people for pain. Typically, when we're in pain, we tend to shallow breathe and we hold our breath, and breathing can help us work through that as well. But pain relief is definitely a top priority in physical therapy.
And all these little things, if you just kind of, I know we all live in an autopilot world. I do it. It's get your clothes on, get out the door, do the thing, come home, and we haven't been living intentionally because we're busy.
Right.
And so when you take the time to, I find myself focusing on one thing. I try and think of one thing that I would like to really focus on that day. And here lately, it has been my posture, because I've been in front of the computer a lot, and I find myself, doing this. So then when I stand up, I'm like, oh my goodness, why is my mid back like killing me? And I'm like, oh,
right.
So that's why I've really, our PT chat has really hit home today, because it's like, okay, these are perfect. I can now see it and I can work towards that.
Yeah.
And there again, working at home is a good place to start, but sometimes
absolutely
you do, and making a conscious effort to be aligned correctly. And that's a good place to start, but physical therapists are excellent as well. Now, Christopher, actually, I have never had dry needling done, but it has always intrigued me. And when I saw that you do offer this in your business, I thought, okay, let's talk about that, because there's a lot of misconceptions on dry needling and what it is.
Yes.
So I'd love for you to tell
Okay,
us about
I
it.
brought some needles over here. Okay, so in physical therapy, I always think that I have a tool basket. And in my tool basket, I've got lots of different ways to help my patients. Um, I worked in a clinic where I had a good friend who was trained in dry needling, and I was very intrigued by it. And so I would watch her, and especially with patients that I was like, gosh, I don't, I can't get them better. Then I would let her be their therapist for a while, and they did. They got better. And so I went and got trained, and I have found that it's been very successful with treating most of my patients. Not everybody likes needles, and so it's not the right tool for physical therapy for everybody, but there definitely is a time where it can be used for sure. And I have used it for TMJ, so into the facial muscles to help relieve TMJ disorder. I've used it for patients with chronic headaches and migraines. We have, of course, muscles all within our scalp, a lot of muscles that come around to the back of our skull. I use it for that. Shoulder tendonitis, knee pain. I've got someone with hip bursitis. I had a patient who was going to have a triple level fusion in her neck. And there's a time and place for surgery for sure, but at all costs, as a physical therapist, I want to see if I can make them not have that surgery. And so the needles were super effective for her. She has not had to have the surgery and has been able to function better in life with less pain. But dry needling is not acupuncture. So there's the misconception that it is. It is acupuncture is an Eastern form of using acupuncture needles, and from what my understanding is it helps to open energy flows, creating alignment in meridians and other facets in the Eastern realm, which I think is all very helpful. In the Western world, the dry needling is using acupuncture needles, but we are going into the musculoskeletal system. So the needles actually go into the muscles. I can go all the way to the bone if I need to, but what the needles do is it helps to unwind muscle fascia percent, if you can. I think of like spaghetti noodles. If you have a bowl of noodles and everything is kind of all crumbled together, and if I swirled a fork in it, I kind of unwind all of those noodles, which are displaced in different angles. So now they have all become aligned in the same alignment. So our fascia, which is between every muscle bundle, fiber, muscle group, it connects bone to bones. It can get jammed or clogged, and that can create muscles to not slide and move and contract the way they're meant to be. So the needles inside the muscle realign the muscle fibers. It sends the needles, and the stimulation of the needles can be stimulated manually. You can twist them, you can wind them, you can also hook the needles up to electrical stimulation. And the stimulation of the needles will help the body, the brain to connect to that area. So it releases a lot of blood flow. Good blood flow to an area helps anything heal. It releases chemicals in the brain that tell the body to release certain chemicals that change the way the muscles are. It's hard to explain. It's just how it helps them heal. It helps them align better. It helps to create regeneration. There's been some studies that have shown even in a degenerative shoulder osteoarthritic joint, it has laid more osteoclasts, which is very hard. Our body normally doesn't lie down more bone cells in that sense. People sometimes can get a little sore from dry needling at first, but typically as they progress in sessions, they feel so much better. I would say 90% of my patients have relief within the first session. Not complete relief all the time, but with progressive sessions, they can have good relief. Anyhow, this is one of the needles. I don't know if you can see it.
Yes.
All of these needles are a one-time use, very safe. They're in a guide tube. This is, they're measured by their diameter and their length. And when you lay it on someone's skin, you click it, and then you can insert it. And then I can angle it to where I want to angle it. I'm not going to do it on the camera, but you can put lots of needles in. When I do someone's low back, I put about at least 12. And I can go all the way down almost to the bone, as well as every layer of the muscle. And I can, as a therapist, feel the tension in a muscle as I insert a needle into them. And I can feel how that changes over time, which is really neat.
That is, it is still fascinating. And I know that when Christopher had it done, he was apprehensive because he thought, but he has had, he was a football player. And so we have some reoccurring trauma and things with knees and shoulders from that. And of course, being more mature now, you know, those kind of come back to haunt us a little bit, I think. But he has just raved about the fact that, you know, instead of taking maybe an ibuprofen or, you know, whatever was prescribed, he doesn't really have to even worry about that so much anymore. It seems to really, it is incredibly and tremendously helped with pain and movement even.
Yeah, it's very healing to the body, in the sense that it helps them be able to function with less pain and recreate movement, because the restriction in the muscles is released. And sometimes just stretching a muscle is not enough. So you have to actually go within the muscle to get the relief. And so this is a great tool, and I have really enjoyed adding it to my repertoire of treatment options.
Oh my goodness. Beth, thank you so much. You have taken us through beginning to nowhere close to the end, but just some good basic tips to feel very safe with, you know, maybe safe isn't the correct word, but that when you hear PT and physical therapist, that can be, if you've not experienced one, something new and out of your comfort zone. But truly the benefits of stretching and making sure you are in alignment. And that does come from somebody who knows how to make sure you're aligned and not tucking your tail.
Yes. Now, there are plenty of people who need to tuck their tail, but in general, I appreciate being on the program too. I really do love teaching people and helping them through their own physical detriments to full health and movement, so that they can enjoy the things that they like. But in the meantime, monitor those screens, give the kids breaks, let them do some exercises to create some counterbalance and movement into extension, since we're flexed so much. And then as an adult, and us as trying to mother or parent our children, to take care of ourselves. If we can model good screen time ourselves and model exercise and its importance in a daily routine, then we're going to make some lasting effects on our little ones as well as ourselves.
Absolutely. Okay, now where you have some fantastic tips up on your own personal webpage, which is acoresolution.com.
My email is acoresolutionpt@gmail.com. So anyone can send me questions. I'm happy to help guide them. I can't really do treatment over the phone, but I can definitely direct them to someone that can help them. I have a Facebook page, The Core Solution, and I have the website. So people are welcome to contact me in any of those ways, and I'll be happy to help guide them.
And Beth was kind enough to send me some guides as well. I'm going to post those on the blog, just so they're on and they're on her page as well, but you'll have two separate places you can find those. And guys, we just appreciate you being here, and we hope that you have enjoyed this as much as we have.
Yes, it's been great fun. Thank you, Amber.
Thank you.